The president certainly believes, as do I, that the best education is closest to the kids, with parental involvement, with teachers being able to be innovative in what they are doing, and to take the bureaucracy out of education. He made it crystal clear during his campaign that he did want to put education back to the states. The Department of Education was established in 1980. Since then, we've spent about $1 trillion on education, and scores have continued to go down. We are not doing something right. Let's trim down. Let's make sure that the people who are there are the very best ones to do the job, and we will then see a rising tide lifts all boats.
Education Secretary Linda McMahon on Newsmax talking about the future of the Department of Education.
McMahon is praising the department for moving to cut its workforce and bring more power to the states. So let's bring in our political panel. April Chapman, a Project 21 ambassador and the host of the Standard of Truth podcast, and Grant Stern, the executive editor for Occupy Democrats. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, it is a good morning. Well, Education Secretary Linda McMahon laying out a timeline for eliminating the agency, saying mass layoffs are the first step, but stressing that the administration isn't taking away education. So, you know, the thing is, April, why are Democrats blowing this way out of proportion? In fact, states should actually be embracing this because it'll actually be more funds coming in that they can actually direct based upon the needs. So that way eradicate the undereducation in certain zip codes. What say you?
Obviously, when individuals don't want something to change because they like it just the way that it already is, they're going to push back. What we are finding is, like Linda McMahon said, for 30 years, the federal government has been in charge of education and things have gotten progressively worse. However, on the left, our friends on the left, they like receiving funding from the teachers' unions. And since the teachers' unions are kind of controlling the purse strings regarding campaign donations, it is in the left's best interest to create a shareable narrative and present alternative facts to make the people believe that lowering or shrinking the Department of Education is actually a bad thing. I am an advocate for smaller government. I believe the local government should have more control in how their funds are being used and spent. And this gives us an opportunity to see at the state level, how can we improve these educational outcomes by giving the states more control and eliminating some of the bureaucracy and needless spending. It does not take $26,000 a year to educate one child. And we know that to be true because we don't see any measurable or favorable outcomes in cities such as Baltimore or even here in Atlanta. Things are getting progressively worse. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And if individuals were really interested in educational outcomes of our children, they would be on board with this. This should be a bipartisan issue.
Absolutely. And in New York City, the actual amount per student spent is over $36,000.
Which is incredible given the way in which New York City ranks and all these other blue cities rank with respect to the education system and reading, writing, arithmetic. We're way down the list. But Grant, this is part of the mandate that Americans wanted with the Department of Education. Linda McMahon was specifically told by Donald Trump to essentially fire herself when she came into that position. And we also saw a mandate with what is going on at Columbia with the protests. Donald Trump saying he no longer will put up with these ridiculous, discriminatory, anti-Semitic protests that we're seeing across college campuses, and he will defund them to the tune of $400 million. But Grant, your take on all of this?
Well, thanks for having me on, Krisha. So my take is very straightforward, that the Department of Education does a lot of important things in this country, and they're not specifically about scores. In fact, this is going to cause pain for people on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, because the Department of Education is in charge of special education. It's in charge of making sure that underfunded school districts get the funds they need. Firing all these employees, it's one of the smallest federal agencies employment-wise, and it distributes a lot of funds to thousands of school districts all over the country without fear or favor from the federal government. Now, look at what happens when you take some of these monies and turn them into block grants. I'll give you Mississippi as an example. Mississippi is a state run entirely by Republicans, right? So decades ago, we took our money for the charity money and welfare money, as they call it, the TANF money, and turned them into block grants. And now look what happened in Mississippi. The Republican governor teamed up with former NFL star Brett Favre and misspent the money. They misspent the money. They spent it on facilities for a volleyball stadium at a university, right? And this is just one example. So taking Congress's preferences away illegally without a vote of Congress and then handing them off to states at random and hoping it all works out, this is going to destroy American education, especially special education, which so many millions of families require and depend on when they have children who have special needs.
That's one bad example that you used, Grant, that lacks the actual details surrounding that volleyball stadium and so forth. But when
Brett Favre stole millions of dollars in welfare money, and he took some himself, but he gave it back eventually.
I would not say that because I think he actually won or is likely to win his lawsuit for defamation. So I would not actually say that, Grant. Just trying to help you out, bro. But let's talk about the economy for just a minute. President Trump dismissing concerns about a recession as Americans worry about the recent Wall Street volatility and the fate of retirement accounts. Here's what the Democrats are saying, April.
And this is all, let's be clear, his doing.
Yeah.
He inherited a strong economy. It's his decisions that have led us to this moment.
Donald Trump inherited an economy that was, by almost all accounts, on the rise.
President Trump inherited a very strong economy.
This administration inherited an economy that was actually growing. That's very rare over the last 20 years.
You know, April, that economy was so strong that they pushed Biden out the way and they didn't even vote for his sidekick, Kamala Harris, because the economy was doing so well. They actually missed all the joy. What say you, April?
This is the gaslighting that America is tired of experiencing. For 4 years, Americans have had to make significant cuts in their budgets. Family vacations were non-existent. We are choosing, do we eat eggs today or are we eating just rice and beans today? Because the cost of things have been so high. Now, all of a sudden, toward the latter part of Biden's administration, we're being told that things were on the up and up when we know that the Federal Reserve artificially slashed rates, trying to give their failed candidate, Kamala Harris, a boost, and it did not work. And I saw and knew that this was going to have catastrophic implications leading into the first quarter of 2025. So now here we are, and President Trump is saying, listen, we've got to make some cuts, and it's going to hurt a little bit. But just like in any American family, we all have been hurting for 4 years. We need to give President Trump time to make the necessary adjustments and allow the market to correct itself. He's not just making cuts, but he's also doing a lot of things that are going to stimulate the economy and bring in revenue and bring in jobs and bring in manufacturing. We've got so many things to look forward to that I trust a millionaire or a billionaire such as Donald Trump. I trust his economic judgment over the previous administration, who demonstrated they didn't have the ability to balance a budget if it had handles and straps and all kinds of appendages and things that would have helped them. They were unable to perform. Things got worse, and Americans, we're ready to see what President Trump is going to do, and we gave them 4 years. We need our 4 years to see what's going to happen.
Exactly. Donald Trump did not inherit a strong economy. For the record, we saw inflation, which the Democrats are finally caring about now. It was at 40-year highs, and the fact that they called it transitory. To your point, April, the Fed cut strategically, politically, right before the election, which was very transparent to most economists, was just another indication that they knew that overall Harris didn't stand a chance, really. But I want to get to this, Grant. Marco Rubio headed to Canada yesterday, the Secretary of State. Successful. Okay. Yeah, let's get to it. We've been talking
about
response.
Cool.
This will be part of the economy. It talks about tariffs. Just hold your horses. So we're talking about Ukraine supporting a 30-day ceasefire, which is also, again, going to affect the economy. Take a listen.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. And hopefully, we'll take this offer now to the Russians. And we hope that they'll say yes to peace. The ball is now in their court.
Grant, I want to give you opportunity to respond to the previous economic question, but also this, because, of course, a ceasefire would be an incredibly important event affecting geopolitics, affecting energy, which is part of the economy. So Rubio has been busy traveling to Canada, and amid the tariff standoffs, he's been doing a lot. But what do you expect to come from these negotiations?
Well, I want to thank you for letting me comment on Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio was tragically born without a spine. And there's nothing you can trust from that man's mouth other than hot air will be expelled. Okay? So Marco Rubio is pretty much like a tool of Donald Trump. He's just there to say whatever is politically expedient for Donald Trump's purposes. The man has no center, no beliefs, and pretty much can't be trusted. But let's talk about the economy, because Donald Trump is tweeting stories out saying, stop talking about eggs just because the price of eggs has, doubled if you can find them on the shelves anymore. Donald Trump's course
Actually, fact check, egg prices have been plunging for $2, over $2. So I just need to fact check you there. But.
Okay, yeah, sure. Donald Trump's course of tariffs and his business uncertainty are driving America into a recession. And Donald Trump himself said he thinks America is going into a recession. Right? The stock market is already at or below where Donald Trump was elected, right? So it's already dropped from where it was when he got voted in. And it's going to continue to drop as long as Donald Trump continues to meddle in the private sector. Letting Donald Trump, the private businessman who bankrupted 6 companies, run America's economy, it's about as smart as letting Ralph Cramden run a bus to the moon.
Gotcha.
Okay? There is absolutely no reason to allow Donald Trump to do this. And the continuing resolution bill that Republicans passed for 6 long months, right? This is a group of Republicans who canceled. They used the Republican cancel culture against Kevin McCarthy to kick him out of the speaker's gavel for a 6-week continuing resolution to keep the government open.
All right.
Well, they said, we're going to give Donald Trump 6 months, and we're going to approve all the tariffs, too.
I understand what you're saying, but it's very clear that the Democrats are scrambling. Why? Because their political prospects are fried, to use an egg example. April Chapman, Grant Stern, thank you so much for joining us.